Continuing the interview. So, when you were a teenager, what did you do for fun?
Well, I don't know that I did a lot for fun. I was part of what we called a sub-deb club, which is kind of like a fake sorority, but there were 14 of us, and we kind of organized ourselves and had a pin that identified us as members of this group, and we did a lot of things together. Right after we graduated from high school, we went up to Chautauqua for a week, the group of us, and one of our mothers chaperoned us, and that was a lot of fun. I think now there's probably only about 4 of us left out of the 14.
How about you, Dad?
I guess the only thing I did was work at Hughes drugstore and high school activities. That was the only thing I did for fun.
What were some of your high school activities?
Photography.
Photography club?
I took pictures during the football game. That was it.
Did I remember that you either built or had a motorized bicycle?
Yeah, I had a motor, took your mother on a ride. She sat on the gasoline tank.
Were you impressed by that, Mom?
No.
Did you have a favorite spot when you were a teenager to just hang out?
In the wintertime, he loved to go ice skating at Potter's Park.
He was a good ice skater. He introduced me to ice skating after we were dating. But before then, I really never had time for, quote, fun things because I studied a lot. In my senior year, I worked after school, so I had no time for other things. I was a cheerleader and part of the time, and so.
Okay. Did either of you ever, as a teenager, get into trouble?
I never did.
Okay. That was easy. When did you learn how to drive? Who taught you? What was your first car like?
I learned to drive in school, took driver's ed. And I guess in those days you had to drive shifting. So I guess I drove my mother's car. Well, getting in trouble reminded me. One day we lived up on Orchard Drive and it was on a hill, and I can remember taking mother's car out and driving it and got in trouble for it.
Without her permission, right?
Yeah.
Mom?
Well, my mother taught me to drive. She had the patience to teach me to drive. But then once I got my driver's license, Dad was the one that would let me drive. And but I never had driver's ed. I learned from my mother, and never had a car until we were married, and our first car together was a 37 Chevy.
Okay, let's challenge your memory. Let's see if we can go from that 37 Chevy all the way up to today. How many cars
He
have you
can,
owned?
but I can't.
1937 Chevy, then we got a Ford Coupe that didn't have a back seat.
That was silly when we had a baby.
And then we had a Mercury.
The wagon?
No, not yet.
No, we had a station wagon up in here.
Yes, but before
And
we
then-
got there.
Then
No, we had a, it was that two-tone green one. What was the, I can't remember the make of the car. But it was in the driveway when we had Tim and took those pictures. What was that? It was a two-tone green car. We bought it brand new.
Okay.
And that was the one I drove up to when we moved from
Oh, yeah.
Hamilton up to Sandusky.
I remember
I
that.
can't think of the name of the car.
Yeah.
Don't you remember it?
The only cars I remember up in here, we had that Mercury convertible.
Well, that's later,
and,
yeah.
And we had the Chevy convertible. It was yellow and white. And then we had your dad's car, that Dodge.
Oh, the push button
Yeah.
transmission in the
Yeah.
Dodge.
But I don't remember. Now, then we had moving back to Ohio, we had the Ford Focus. And we had the Plymouth. And
The Sprite or the
And then we went into,
Atlanta. And then we had the green Torino,
the Gremlin.
the Gremlin, the orange pumpkin. And then we had the
Nissans. We got into Nissans, and you had the Mustang up in-
Mustang,
Right.
yellow Mustang.
Mm-hmm. And then we traded that in for the convertible.
I think we've got them all mixed up, but that's
Pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad, not too shabby.
Okay, well, what was your graduation from high school like, and what dreams or goals did you have for your life when you graduated?
Go ahead, Bob.
I had no dreams at all.
Well, I was going to be an art teacher, and I worked hard. I studied. I was not real totally bright, but I worked very. I was a plodder, so I got good grades. And actually, I graduated 7th in a class of 400 and some. And that was, you didn't know that. You just forgot.
No.
Well, it was on the brochure of our graduation. I was just going to be an art teacher.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to move into the area of their adulthood. So I'll begin, Dad, by asking you about your military experience. What did you do, and what was that experience like?
Well, in 1948, I joined the Navy for 1 year and 6 years in the reserve, and I was stationed out in San Diego in the hospital there. I was a hospital corpsman working on the orthopedic ward. And after that discharge, I came home, and about 8 months later, I guess it was 6 months later, the Korean War broke out, and a couple months after that, I was called back into active duty because of being a medical corpsman, which supplies corpsmen to the Marines. So in November, December, went for 30 days Marine training. Went up to Big Bear Mountain in California for snow training, and it was hotter than blazes, no snow at all. And then flew from San Francisco to Tokyo, Japan, with stops in Hawaii and Guam and Johnson Island. And then landed in Tokyo, and then a couple weeks later boarded a Japanese fishing ship for Korea. And one of the things stuck out, it was on Christmas Eve, and a group of us took our rifle with a bayonet, and of course this was a fishing boat-like, and it had a wooden deck, so we jammed the bayonet into the wood, and then put a poncho up over the heel of the rifle and made like a little Christmas tree, and we took chewing gum wrapper, the aluminum foil, and made little Christmas ornaments like, and stuck that, and that was our Christmas tree. Landed in Busan, and as we got off the ship, they gave us a round of bullets to use, and then served some time in Korea, and then till I was wounded, and
Can you tell us about that experience?
well,
Your Purple Heart?
we were fighting and got the North Koreans off of a mountain, and I had a pack, and we all had packs, big heavy packs, and all our gear and food was in it. So I went back to get mine and had it slung over my shoulder, and they start shooting, lobbing in mortars. No, I don't know what you can call them anymore, but a concussion knocked me off the cliff and hurt my back, and it was real muddy, so they couldn't put me in an ambulance because it was too rough. So they brought in a helicopter, and they strapped me to the outside of one of those bubbles, and I can remember sticking my hand as they closed the bubble. I wanted to see what it was. It was colder than heck, and we landed in Daegu at an army hospital, and I thought we were in North Korea because two Koreans carried me on a stretcher, and went into the hospital, and there was a big, heavy-set black woman, nurse, take care of me, and she couldn't understand what a sailor in Marine clothes was doing in an army hospital.
I think I remember there's a picture that showed up, was it in the Hamilton newspaper, about with you on crutches?
Mm-hmm. Getting his Purple
Yeah,
Heart.
that was funny too, because the bathrobe I had USA on it, Army.
Oh.
And before the captain presented, the lieutenant came up and shoved that underneath my armpit so it wouldn't show.
So, Mom, what was your experience like with Dad serving in North Korea?
Well, I can't say it was easy, but during that time we were able to, I worked and did little else besides work and keep the house going. We bought a little house and had a coal furnace that I had to keep fed, and I learned how to do it and how to bank it so that the fire stayed through the night and the cold nights. I don't know, after our experience through World War II, you just did what you had to do. Mm-hmm. And so I worked hard and used the money for getting a little bit of furniture for the house, and painted and did things to keep the house going. And that's when we bought that car, that little 37 Chevy. And
Yeah, I made $80 a month. And Mother they sent 45 of it home. You got 45, and I supposedly got 40, but they never paid me for a long time because couldn't keep up with me. But going back to the house, what is really unique, that house my mother owned. And this is before I knew Louise. And my mother sold it to Louise's mother and father.
Really?
Yeah, and then we bought it from them.
yeah, I finished up my high school days living there.
And this was on Orchard Drive?
No.
810 Northeast Street.
Northeast?
Where you were.
You were born
there.
while we lived there.
Yeah.
That's your first house you lived in.
Oh, okay.
And then
My mother owned it originally.
How about that? I didn't know that.
something that's interesting, one night, I lived by myself, and one night, I could not sleep, and I was just real disturbed and distressed, and I cried off and on all night. And later, I found out that was the very day that he got injured.
No, really?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. So, what happens then when? Oh, I think you've told me the story about how there was really a clerical error
Yeah, when they
in discharge.
when I was over in Japan at what they call an R&R hospital, and I was working, and finally they noticed they got to send me back to Korea. So I was getting ready to go back, and then they called me down to the headquarters, and the government came out with a policy that World War II veterans could get early discharge. And since I was, on my discharge card, when I went in the Navy in 1948, it says honorable discharge, World War II. So they said, well, since you're a World War II veteran, we're going to send you home. I wasn't going to tell them. So they put me on a ship. First time I ever been on a ship, and got seasick. And we docked in San Diego, and we had to go up and down the coast for a while because the mayor and the Red Cross weren't there yet to welcome us. We were the first Marines back from the Korean War.
Oh, really?
So I was getting ready to get discharged, and 2 days before I got discharged, they called me in the office again and said, well, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. You're not a World War II veteran, so you have to serve out. So where do you want to go? And the closest place I could get was the Naval Hospital in Chicago.
Great Lakes.
Great
Mhm.
Lakes. So they sent me there, and I worked in an eye clinic, and just happened to mention to the eye doctor there that my father was a optometrist. Said, oh, okay, let me check your eyes. He checked my eyes and found out I was 4F. I should have never been called back. So they gave me a
Oh.
discharge.
So that was a medical discharge at
Yeah,
that
but
point?
you served another 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's a great story. Okay. We've talked about how you met, and your engagement, and your marriage. How old were you each when you were married?
Well,
19 and 18.
yeah, since we were married
19 and 18.
right before our birthdays. My birthday was in July, and then we were married in August, so I had just turned 19.
Okay.
And then he hadn't turned 20 until September. So
Okay.
we were both 19 when we got married.
Okay.
In fact, we were to be married in September.
Yeah.
And the fact that we had the wedding invitations all printed and everything, saying September the
4th, I think it
4th,
was.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I got called into active duty, so we had to cross out September 4th and put August 11th.
And you honeymooned in New York.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was exciting. We did a lot of things. We walked up to the top of the Empire State Building. And I had heels on.
You walked up?
We walked up, and
Not
inside.
the Empire State
Not
Building.
the Empire State
The
Building. I'm sorry,
Statue of
Statue of
Liberty.
Liberty.
Yeah.
But we did go up on the
Yeah, in
Empire
the
State.
elevator, yeah.
We did all the things that
Yeah.
we could walk to or
What
get.
was funny, borrowed Louise's father's brand new car to drive, and here we are driving in New York City, and had a little change purse.
It was in the penny was in your shoe. You know how you put pennies in
No,
your
I'm
purse?
talking about that where somebody took the pennies out of.
That's what I am too. It was out of your shoe.
Why was my shoe in the car?
You had left them in, I guess. Well, anyway.
Petty loafers?
Anyway, somebody had taken a penny out of the car at the parking.
Oh, okay.
Ridiculous. But yeah, it was. We did some things, and we stopped and did things. We stopped at Gettysburg, and we stopped at a few things in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And had a
I
hard
didn't.
time.
Yeah, I didn't think I wasn't well versed in these honeymoons. I was smart enough to know to get a hotel the first night,
Yeah.
so we got that in Dayton, but that was it.
And
Yeah.
we couldn't find a place.
No.
There were conventions and stuff. We went on the Pennsylvania Turnpike going east, and we got off at many places and couldn't find anything. We finally found this. It's kind of like a bed and breakfast in Harrisburg. I think it was
Yeah,
Harrisburg.
it was.
And it was a little old room in a little old house. It was really neat. Very, very nice and very cozy.
So when you got back from your honeymoon, what happened next? Is that where you went
We
to
just
San
had
Diego?
about a week or so before you shipped
Yeah.
out.
And so you went to San Diego, Mom?
Not
Yeah.
at that time. He
I
went.
went to Great Lakes to start
Oh,
with.
that's right.
And then they shipped me out to Mare Island Naval Hospital, and I worked at a psych ward. So
Mm.
during the night, and then Mother came out, hitchhiked with another woman.
There was a lady that I did not know, but a friend knew, and said she's has a baby. She's going to San Diego to be with her husband, and she's looking for somebody that would go with her just to help with the baby. So I contacted her, and we got together and talked and set the time, and then she and I drove, and we stayed in a motel one night, and the rest of the time we went straight through night.
Oh, wow.
And this was before interstates. We went Route
Yeah.
66, and that was neat. That was neat. At one time, we changed drivers without stopping the car. I was in the back
Gosh.
seat. I was in the back seat, and we were on 66, and it was straight. And she scooted over, and I put my legs over and slid down.
Well, you must have continued that tradition, because growing up, I remember those long trips, and you'd always have a pee bottle in the car for us boys.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about children. Yeah, any on the birth stories of any of the kids, or the arrival stories in terms of Lynn?
Well, you didn't want to get here.
I didn't want to get.
No.
And so you were exactly 2 weeks late.
And after you got here, I wouldn't let anybody come in to see you, because the doctor said not have a lot of visitors.
Oh yeah. Well, I did not have you naturally. You were large, and you had very large shoulders, and so I was cut, and I could hardly move and sit down for a while. So it was not an easy time afterwards. And he told him not to let any visitors in the house, which is
So
you
you
got
were in the front bedroom?
first baby.
And I opened the blinds so they could see you.
Yeah. Yeah, you weighed 9 pounds 6 ounces.
And your lives changed forever after that
That's
moment.
right.
Sure.
That's right. That's right.
So how about anything? How about Tim's birth?
Well, we had sold that house and moved to another house by that time, and I don't know. I think he was just a few days late. All of you boys were late as far as the due date goes. The Dr. Lehman was the doctor for Tim, and he told me, if you don't go into labor before Wednesday, then you go into the hospital Wednesday morning at such and such a time, and I'll induce you. And the funny part of it is I was in labor when I went.
Oh.
And he poked his head in and he said, I can't deal with you now. I've got to go into the office. So I'll be back this afternoon to give you whatever it is they give you. And I said, you don't need to give me anything. So it wasn't too long, few hours. And Tim was born.
And Brian's birth?
Brian came after 2 miscarriages 5 years later. And I thought we weren't going to make it to the hospital that night. We got there about, I don't know, 11:15 or something like that, and he was born at 11:45. So
I have a memory. You must have dropped Tim and I, your neighbors,
Yes.
across the street in
Yeah.
Huron, and I have a vivid memory of being in your arms, Dad, at night, and you're carrying me back to the house, and you told me I have a little brother.
Yeah, because I remember in those days, the fathers weren't allowed, nobody was allowed in, and I can
Right.
remember our good friend, Joanne, who was a nurse there at the hospital. And I could hear her cry, and I knew that was Brian.
Mm.
well, speaking of Joanne, when I was 6 months pregnant with Brian, I had some symptoms that I had to go to the hospital for. And she grabbed her uniform and put it on and came in and sat with me all night.
Oh.
And they're still good friends.
So what do you remember about Lynn's arrival? She was what, about 7 or 8?
7.
She was 7 at that time, and
We
she
first
turned
met
8.
her at the zoo,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
at the
And,
monkeys.
yeah. I could see her, and I said, Bob, I bet that's her. I bet that's her. And she was just a little girl, happy, playful, tried to please, but had many needs.
What can you remember? Anything funny or embarrassing that one of your children said at an early age that you'll never forget?
I probably could if I could think.
Well, I could tell you about Brian. Remember Brian, the infamous? You were always on him to finish his dinner, and
Oh yeah.
and then finally he came up. We were in
Nope.
Georgia. Well, no one taught me how to chew.
Yeah.
How to swallow.
Swallow?
How to
Oh, okay.
swallow. Oh, nobody ever taught me how to swallow.
Well, Tim would hide the peas under
Yes.
the plate or drop them
In
down
the
the
mashed
register.
potatoes, in
Well,
the shirt pocket.
True confessions, I did it sometimes too. So. But Tim
we
was
just
the
never caught you.
Tim was the master though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
If you knew he was being excused to go to the bathroom, you knew he was taking some vegetable up there to flush it down the toilet. What one of the questions here? What makes you proud of your children?
Oh my goodness. So many things.
I think probably the most, would your mother agree to this, I'm sure, that all three of them love the Lord.
Yeah. And then too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about that.
What do you remember about holiday family celebrations?
Ours or
Yes, growing up with your children.
Oh shoot, I think the most I can remember is at the park in Marion, Ohio. We'd get together.
Mother and Dad and Donna, and Donna was still in school.
And have
And,
badminton and softball games.
and that was the one time that you boys had the privilege, you could eat anything you want or drink anything, and we just let you. Today is a fun day, no rules,
Yeah.
and I can remember seeing Tim walking with his little tummy sticking out with a soda bottle in his hand.
Of course, one of my vivid memories is of the softball, and Mom, you were the pitcher, Dad was up to bat, and this was not on video, so my memory doesn't come from that. And you hit a line drive screamer that hit her right in the eye socket, and she just dropped like a rock, just folded and went down, and that was a scary moment.
Yeah.
I don't know why my glasses didn't break.
Wow,
I really don't, because I was wearing glasses.
I thought it hit you right there, and
maybe it did.
Well, remember, it was in the next month then that I had, that's when I started with the headaches and did that, and the doctor said, well, that's what caused it, but then he said, no, it couldn't because it was too long, too far. But yeah, I had, when we were, I had some illnesses or events happen when we were up in here, and then that was one of them. That was certainly one of them.
Well, I remember coming home from school and seeing kind of washed out what turned out to be blood on the front porch, and walking inside, and there you were on the couch. And tell us that story.
Well, that was in the day and age that we had a milkman deliver milk in bottles. And so after you used the milk, you washed them out and you set them out by the door. And on certain days, the milkman picked up those bottles and delivered them. Well, I was about 6 months pregnant, so I was
sticking out
there. And I put several milk bottles in this arm, and I had another milk bottle in my left hand. And I'm sorry, one in my right hand. And I went out and I put my foot down on the step and I leaned over and I lost my balance. And I went straight down through the milk bottle. And I still have a wonderful, beautiful scar of that.
But they fused your thumb bone,
Yeah,
right?
later.
Oh, so you've never been able to bend your thumb?
No, I don't bend my thumb.
Yeah.
From that time on, I haven't bent
Right.
mine. And we're talking 1960, because Brian was born later that year.
Well, you still have the best handwriting of anybody in our family.
But I had it fused in Atlanta before we moved to Connecticut, so that would have been 1978.
I don't know, Susan's giving her a
Yeah.
good challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, Susan's got great. She prints right beautifully.
So let's just have this question, then we'll take a break. What about your daughters-in-law, and tell how they came into your family, and how they just kind of expanded our sense of family? You're marrying your boys.
Well, one at a time. We were just ready to open our arms and say, "Here we are. You're part of the family." And maybe sometimes we were too quick to do that, but we just, my feeling was I was just ready to accept. I needed another daughter, so
Yeah.
it was.
Far
Sherry